What are the tasks and activities you're naturally drawn to that like ignite something within you? You're passionate about them. You really enjoy them. You get a net energetic benefit from those. Go and find other people that care about similar topics as you and see if there's communities for you to join. You can learn faster through discussion and engaging conversation. You can accelerate your learning process.
You're listening to the TJ Moore Podcast. Today's guest is Matthew Biggar from British Columbia, Canada. He's the co-founder of the Biggar Together community, along with his wife, Jamie, and he's the creator of the Multiplier Zone coaching and productivity training programs for solopreneurs and small teams. Also, he's been selected by LinkedIn for multiple years as one of their top voices on the platform. Matt, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, TJ.
I want to share with everyone that you were an electrician, you've worked in corporate companies, then you started your business in 2017. So you've worked on so many different sides of also working for organizations, companies, and yourself. What do you believe the difference is between typical productivity advice, such as progress tracking, consistency, all of those things we're used to hearing, and what it means to integrate your purpose into what you're doing?
What a great question to open our conversation. I think that a lot of the common advice out there is predominantly focused on just getting a lot more done and doing it with speed, getting as much done as you possibly can. This all kind of started after I, built my business. I was an electrician, when I was much younger in my 20s. And that's what really started me on this path. I was kind of miserable in the work and I just knew something was off. I was making good money and I was blowing all of my money. I had nothing, right? And so I knew that I needed to find some source of meaning in my life. And that's what kind of opened up this path to explore this through a multitude of pivots and career changes over the years. It's possible to integrate purpose into your work and perform better because of it. And it's not necessarily about getting more done faster. It's more about contribution and bringing your best to help others. And that's how I define purpose. It's the best of what you already have within you to help other people. And the reason why that helps you perform better is because you get fulfillment from that work that energizes you. You're more engaged in your work, and engagement enables you to overcome bigger challenges. It increases your capacity to do hard things, and building a business for yourself isn't easy, especially if you're a solopreneur. This came from a time in my life where I started to really reflect on, if this was my last day on earth, what do I want to reflect on? And it's not a list of things that I got done. It's engaging experiences. It's the relationships and the people. It's being able to help others. I want to reflect on a life that I really enjoyed the whole way, instead of, delaying that or deferring it to a future date that never arrives.
It can be good to zoom out and see it from that perspective of not just what you're doing this day, this month, this year, but what is the legacy that you're leaving? What's the impact that you're leaving? How are you helping others? I have a friend who is a discovery coach for purpose. Are there any tools or techniques that you have used that have helped you hone in on what that is for you?
Yeah, I've tried a few. So the first one I came across was Simon Sinek's, right? Start with why. I loved his golden circle principle that he was teaching in his famous TED Talk. And at that time, I thought, well, I cracked the code on sales and marketing, because he was teaching, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I actually pivoted my first business as a result of that advice. It's dependent on a great thought partner. You must select someone who is good at looking at the stories you share with them and drawing a thread out of those stories out of you, right? So it's really dependent on the other person. and I didn't get the best results with it. So it never really stuck for me. Sometime in 2025, I found the Purpose Company, and they have an assessment tool that's called the Purpose Factor. My wife actually connected with the head coach, and he gave her complimentary access to the assessment. She loved it. She told me about it. She knew it was like right up my alley, right? Like, I have to go and do this. So I connected with him as well. He did the same for me. And it made such a profound difference. Things just really clicked. And if anyone's ever taken personality assessments, they're usually kind of a mixed bag. You get, some insights that you're like, oh yeah, that's totally me. And then sometimes a bunch of other stuff that just really, it ends up being a PDF that sits on your hard drive and you never really revisit it. I became a certified coach with the Purpose Factor because of how profound it was in its accuracy and how it's taught to be implemented. That was one of the differentiators. So the training that I received in that certification enabled me to be able to do the same for others, to connect their strengths, their natural advantages, their origin story, like the experiences that they've been through in their life. And it's where I discovered that, we never really have to have motivation if we have conviction. And conviction is defined as pain and clarity. So when you combine those two things together, you get something that fuels you. And when you're really clear on how that integrates with your purpose, you never have to look for motivation. You just know why you're doing things. It gives you direction, and you can make decisions easier. You can start to filter your decisions through your purpose. And that's what gives you alignment. And that's what helps you increase your performance. So it's all linked together. And that was one of the most profound tools. So I appreciate the opportunity to share a bit more about it because it's made a huge difference for me.
Yeah, it's almost like a daisy chain of events like you're talking about with, so people want the performance, they want to have consistency, but some of those come later down the line. If you don't understand more the driving force, some people would call it intrinsic motivation, purpose that we're talking about. If you don't have that established, it's harder to get the commitment that's required, to get the discipline, to get the motivation. I mean, it's a whole chain of things. And we often speak of them almost like they're separate.
Right.
And you speak also on the concept of knowing your wiring. So in the past, you said that you had to work to throw yourself into the work that rarely fit your wiring. So it relied on willpower, discipline. Then all of these things were not adding up to the result that you wanted. So how should people make some of these smaller changes that are more incremental to align their work with the one thing that they do best?
I would say don't do it the hard way like I did, right? This was 20 years of pivoting, and it was a bit of a slower process. I just want to be clear, like, I'm not, like, there's no regret here. There's a silver lining in every lesson. Every challenge that I've been faced with has taught me something really valuable. When I started my business in 2017, I mean, it didn't change. It just kept pivoting. I kept pivoting the business, trying to figure it out. I got off track a lot. And it wasn't until I really got more clear on, number one, how do I integrate my strengths so that I'm able to put myself into a position where I can contribute my best to others. The offers that I create to support other people come from my strengths and align with purpose. And so there's a hard way to figure that stuff out, and there is an easier way, right? As cliche as it sounds, probably don't try to figure it out by yourself, especially when it comes to purpose. Purpose is the best of what you have to help others. That means that you get information, you get data. Is through taking action and collecting insights through the work that you do to help other people, you can figure it out.
The first tool I ever used for this topic about finding your purpose was StrengthsFinder about 20 years ago. I remember going through that, and it would just got more and more and more specific in all of the questions. And I was going to mention that even people that have accomplished so much, politicians, entertainers, world leaders, whatever. When they have their memoir written about them, they almost always are outsourcing it to someone who has the ability to record them. It usually takes weeks where they sit down with them. They basically interview them and they're pulling out all of these life lessons, the moments, all the things that were memorable turning points for them. A lot of these memories were not that accessible if the person just sat down at the computer and tried to bang away at it, because most of the people that have memoirs coming out are not professional writers. Right. So I just wanted to bring that up, that it can take sort of an outside perspective, even if we've already accomplished so much, to highlight what your actual story is along the way.
Yeah, one of the hardest things to see for yourself is your strengths and your natural advantage. Like, what are you truly great at? That because it's so natural for you, whatever those strengths are, that you just automatically do it. And it's almost effortless, right? So we don't necessarily recognize it until someone else points it out and they say something like, hey, you're pretty good at that. And it's almost like seeing in others that other people don't necessarily share those strengths, that helps you recognize them in yourself. So that's why connection is so important.
And we can identify them very quickly, often in the lives of others, our social orbit, as I call it. Like, oh, of course, well, that person makes that look so easy. But we're not seeing the years of experience, what happened behind closed doors, the practice that's involved. You can have a talent or proclivity for something, but it does take skill, is more about sharpening that talent and through practice. And you've written about feeling stuck in different places in time by a linear success model, where it was like 1 unit of effort equals 1 unit of that result. So can you explain the concept behind the consistency advice trap?
I started a YouTube channel on that advice. It was pretty common on social media, and to almost the detriment of well-being, to be honest, for a lot of creators. I felt obligated that I needed to show up every single week with a video on my channel, no matter what. And that meant that sometimes I just procrastinated and waited until Friday afternoon, and then they would push into the weekend and I'd still have to get that content done. And I didn't feel good about it. And my wife was like, why are you like working on YouTube on the weekends? Because that's when she was off, right? So I didn't have time to spend with my family as a result. It was a turning point because I was teaching people how to create video content. I think I was like really frustrated with the consistency advice, but I essentially regurgitated it as a way to show up. I grabbed my phone and I literally phoned it in. I didn't put any effort into this video, and I just talked about consistency and why it was important. And I was just saying the same thing that I'd heard before. And after that, I uploaded it and I just really didn't feel very good about the work that I'd put into it. Sometime after that, I actually stopped posting videos on that channel. It's hilarious to me that I can look back and I'm still, there's still content that gets comments. There's still subscribers showing up, and I haven't posted on there for 3 years, but it was the obligation. And so what can happen with this consistency trap is you can be really consistent at all the wrong things. There's so many things vying for our attention, or shiny objects or opportunities or potential directions that we could move in, that sometimes we aren't being consistent at the right things. And that's what I really care about, is helping people increase their effectiveness. And that requires doing less things. And so sometimes we have to cut away stuff and activities and stop doing those things. But we also need to be really clear on what's worth keeping.
So you've worked with all these different clients in so many different industries. Is there a common thread of a misconception of why some people are productive and others just aren't? No matter what they do, they can't get to that productivity level that they want?
I think first it starts with our relationship with time, right? So time is a perception. And our perception creates our reality. And so if we are of the belief that we're always busy and there's never enough time, then we're probably going to always feel like we're behind. that we can never get enough done. And it won't matter what productivity tactic or strategy that you try, and might end up, trying a lot of different ones that never really get to the root of that problem. The thing I see very often, especially with like high achievers, is the amount of effort we can cap out, and it's based on the amount of hours that we have. And so I have infinite curiosity about effectiveness. How do you put your best in and prioritize that work? And I'm not saying ignore all the other things that have to get done in order for you to grow your business, but we can prioritize the work that it gives us a much larger return on the effort that we're putting in. And usually that comes from what I call the multiplier zone. It's the intersection where your income, your wiring, and your purpose all converge. So you've got that circle in the middle of the Venn diagram. Jim Collins called it, the hedgehog concept in his book, Good to Great. And people are familiar with the Japanese ikigai as another framework. The hard part is figuring out how all of it fits together. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just really understanding how you can integrate it and keep things simple. And that intersection is where we find the one thing, right? Your strengths are integrated. Your values are not compromised. Your purpose is also integrated, right? So you get fulfillment from the work you're doing and contribution to other people. And you're able to generate an income for it that moves you towards the goals that you have for yourself. So I call that whole life success, right? If you can get all three of those things working together and moving in the right direction, it doesn't feel so heavy. And you don't really need to even worry about the time anymore. You enjoy the process and the build, and we're not obsessing over the future goals that seem unobtainable.
There's the very famous book, The Four Agreements, which I ultimately think is about what we're talking about, which is integrity. Your beliefs, your words, your actions aligning and coming together. And these frameworks about purpose, such as the Ikigai one, there was a virality to how they were been discussed in all these different forms. However, I have showed that framework and done it with several friends in my own life, and they had never known about what that was. And it was very eye-opening for them, because sometimes they were doing a job or putting a lot of effort into a passion project that was so out of alignment for them. It was so draining, but they didn't know why it was draining them. So doing those exercises, I've seen it with my own eyes, where it shaped them in the right direction of, okay, this is not sustainable. I got to change it up. I got to do something else. So what are some of the warning signs that you see someone might be succeeding professionally, but they're drifting or feeling depleted in all of the other areas of their life?
We need to elevate our awareness around our energy and the use of it, right? It's finite. Every single day we wake up, we only have a certain amount of mental bandwidth, right? By the end of the day. What are the tasks and activities that seem to drain you? And we're just collecting data and we're refining and making adjustments. What are the tasks and activities that you're naturally drawn to, that like ignite something within you? You're passionate about them. You really enjoy them. You get a net energetic benefit from those. When I get to coach clients, I feel more energized after those calls if I'm working with the right types of clients. If we have to do work that requires willpower and discipline, and we feel frustrated, and it's something that you have to do repetitively, that's usually a great place to start looking at making adjustments. And I say this with, caution, because I understand and recognize and respect that not everybody's in a situation where they're able to change the activities that they work on depending on their job. If you want to, live a life well lived, then sometimes we need to go through a challenge to make a change. If we're in a situation where everything is completely out of alignment and we're just like exhausted all the time and frustrated and maybe even angry at the work that we have to do, because it is so out of alignment with what you're naturally great at and your values.
And that resentment toward how you're spending your time, people use the term soul sucking experience. If they're in the wrong career path or job or the wrong client, whatever, is it going to be months? Is it going to be years? Is it going to be decades? I have met people that knowingly stayed in the wrong lane or the wrong career path for almost their entire life.
Yeah.
I'm going to use the word loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
Which I've studied and is actually the title of a mafia novel. I want to bring up that you love Legos. We see a lot on your shelf there. You have several different ones behind you. Can you explain this analogy you have about how draining it can be building a career without a sense of direction?
I mean, I'm the type of guy that likes the manual for the Lego set, right? I want to see the picture of the end result. And I enjoy the process of following the steps one brick at a time. And that's very similar to building a life and a career for yourself. I also love the stacking wins principle. You can build momentum in a specific direction. And if you recognize the wins and success that you are having, it does something to your brain when you're focused on that. If we're always in problem solving mode, just stuck in challenges, it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your energy's low, you're frustrated, and you don't have the sense of creativity that you need to overcome those challenges, right? This has all been proven through neuroscience. There's, decades of research behind it. So the way I kind of think about Lego, at first, there's a lot of inspiration about how they build their brand, how much they care about the user experience, how open they are to feedback, how they integrate community into the actual builds and source that information from the actual users. And I don't think that it's any coincidence that a lot of their marketing actually has adults in it. Right? I mean, I grew up with Lego. I didn't use or play with Lego for most of my adult life. And it was actually this Grogu set here that opened the door back up because I just loved The Mandalorian. And I built that. And then I was like re-hooked back in, and I'm like obsessed with it. But there's so many lessons to learn through this, activity of just being present with your time. And I think that goes back to another reason why a lot of us won't make changes in our career or business, especially when money is involved, income. If that's your primary source of, income in your life, it can be really scary to move towards unpredictability. It's one of the biggest things that limits human potential is the fear of the unknown. And so if we are not able to see and predict the future and what's going to happen, that's sometimes what keeps that stuckness where you just don't want to move forward or change something. However, we're much more capable than we think. And if you're able to build the resilience and make decisions to change as needed so that you can move in the right direction for you, it's worth it.
This next topic I can relate to more than anything that we've spoken about. So you've written that isolation is the enemy of sustained momentum. What are some examples of ways people can stop doing everything alone?
I think you've got to find a community that is aligned for you. That's the first thing, especially as a solopreneur or anybody who just feels like maybe you're isolated. I used to kind of pride myself on the introvert sort of label. I need space to myself to re-energize, and it's perfectly normal. But I actually discovered ambivert, which is more integrated. There's a middle ground. It's not just extrovert and introvert. Some of us can thrive in both. I think back a lot to when I was in school and how much I hated homework. I just didn't have any motivation to actually work and try to learn by myself. And it's part of the reason why I started a community, because I do believe that when we connect with each other and we have deeper conversations and we have a safe space where we feel like we can be ourselves, that you can accelerate your learning process, right? So instead of just consuming content all the time, Go and find other people that care about similar topics as you and see if there's communities for you to join. You can learn faster through discussion and engaging conversation.
How do you guide people to build relationships that are more multifaceted than just traditional networking?
The 3C method is, while you're having conversations, be looking for, number one, potential clients, but not always. Sometimes they're collaborators and sometimes they're connectors. And those are some of my favorite people. They're kind of unicorns, so they're kind of rare, but they're just like, they love connecting people and opportunities together. We have to invest into relationships. It's not transactional necessarily. To be open and collaborative and see where things go and not put so much pressure on like an agenda or a specific outcome, but do it on your terms. I mean, 3 to 5 conversations a week could be more than enough for you to find the opportunities that you're looking for. And I've always found this to be true, whether I was, in a career or in my business. Everything is about relationships. And so those conversations really matter. And it makes a huge difference. And so that's what I would say is just look for the 3 C's, find your people. If you find people who are, they kind of like seem like they're a cheerleader for your work, like they really love what you're doing, but they're not necessarily a fit to be a client. Those people can be advocates. It's all about those connections and relationships and the doors of opportunity that you open when you invest into them. And it doesn't mean just giving everything away all the time. I like to use the art of invitation when it comes to working with people that I think that I could support them and help them. It's never a pitch. It's always an invitation for another conversation.
I have found that the connector people that you're talking about often reveal themselves very naturally as you're getting to know them in different ways, whether it's over virtual or real life or email, doesn't really matter. But usually what it comes down to is they enjoyed the experience with you on a level that reminded them of, you know what, this person that I know could accelerate what you're doing in this way. We got to get you two together if it's a match, even just to inspire each other or to feel seen by them. Like it doesn't always have to lead to money or lead to something else happening. So when it comes to business strategy, I want to hear your take on depth versus volume.
I think we can initially, a lot of the times when we start a business, get obsessed over the volume game, right? We sort of tend to put people up on a pedestal based on their subscriber count or their amount of followers. It can be used as a measuring stick to weigh whether they're worth listening to. And unfortunately, that's not very reliable. Sometimes people have huge followings and they can post absolute garbage. If it's a volume game, when it comes to sales too, then that's about like those mass pitching DMs that you get in your inbox, right? 100 messages a day is some people's target, right? I want to build relationships. I want to invest into people. I want to help others, right? I'm looking for collaborators and connectors and potential clients in that effort. And yeah, I do some outreach, but it's not a volume game. It's about looking for the right signals. It's about looking for values alignment. I don't need 1 million people to follow me. I just need like 100 really great conversations or relationships with people that I want to keep around and continue building a relationship with over time.
For them to trust you, there has to be a bridge of trust, whether it's conscious or subconscious.
We're in a bit of a trust recession, right? Skepticism is sort of at an all-time high. Anyone can appear to be an expert these days. And so you have to build trust. And sometimes it takes multiple points to do that and to be okay with that. And as a business owner, right, it's on my shoulders. It's my responsibility to create assets or structure that helps people feel like they can trust someone like myself and working with them.
Can you go through what's included in your one-on-one coaching called the Multiplier Zone?
The Multiplier Zone is an entry-level program where I work with solopreneurs, small teams, to increase their effectiveness And it's usually about going from sort of like scattered effort to really dialing things in to identify what are the activities that leverage, the best of what you have, so that you're able to increase your effectiveness. And so I do this in 4 sessions, and I do that over, 60 days, if that's what's required. And I love it. I ended up creating a playbook for them. We use assessment tools like Purpose Factor. Colby A Index is another one, because it shows you how you naturally solve problems and which sequence you're actually most effective at doing that. So I use those 2. And if someone has something like StrengthsFinder, that can also be integrated. And I show them how to use a tool like Notebook LM and AI to create a container, an environment where you can feed it all of your assessments, your results, and start to ask it questions. So you walk away with what I call a playbook, right? That helps you understand how to adjust how you're using your time, how you can increase your effectiveness and stay on track, which is that consistency piece, right? Staying consistent at the right activities. And that's the outcome of the program.
I think a lot of frameworks fit best at different stages of someone's personal development. Some of them are like really broad, almost like personality tests that are getting you more like toward a direction. And then when someone starts working with a coach or a mentor, it's like, all right, we can't be using like the shotgun method anymore. We need the laser. We need to get in there. It's almost like I think of it like internal surgery of like your inner psyche, your inner world, which is so mysterious to us, but it's usually more obvious when someone can look at your behavior, your habits, even some of the results and say, all right, so how do we reverse engineer this? So what's the most common breakthrough or feedback that you hear from clients after going through this with you?
A lot of the times it's the chaos, right? So just feeling like they're behind and there's so many things vying for their attention. And that can transform actually very quickly. Once we start to create inventory, I help them see everything that they're carrying. And we create an inventory. When we have inventory, it's like taking the spices out of the cupboard and, looking in your fridge, like what recipe are you actually making? You need to know what ingredients you have and what you're working with so that you can understand how to be more effective. Part of it is reducing the amount of things that are vying for attention so that you can create situations where you're able to achieve flow state, right? 90-minute to 2-hour windows where you're able to do deep work. And it's also about really identifying what's worth keeping, right? And to start to prioritize those for the best times of day for when your energy and your focus and your creativity are at their best. Because I believe you should put your best energy, your focus, your creativity into the things that you're best at, right? That's the mastery, that's the depth, that's the practice. And becoming great at something so that you're able to differentiate yourself in the marketplace.
I want to mention that your business community, Biggar Together, helps solopreneurs who are tired of working in isolation find clarity, momentum through their purpose so that their business expands their life instead of consuming it. It's everything that we've been talking about. So the best way to contact Matt is to search Matthew Biggar, Biggar, on LinkedIn and send him a DM. I know that he responds to pretty much every DM on there. And also to learn more about his community, go to biggartogether.com. That's Biggar together.com.
If you want to increase your performance, your effectiveness and execute, right? And grow in whatever direction to move towards your goals, the number one most important thing, the catalyst, in my opinion, is to get support. Find other people, even if it is just building like your own board of advisors. Connect with people and build trust with them. Invest into those relationships. You don't need to do this alone.
Matt, thanks so much for joining me for today's episode.
Thank you.
To hear more experts share their story, subscribe to the TJ Moore Podcast on YouTube and follow this show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts to listen anywhere you go. Like and comment on this video if you found today's conversation valuable, and share this episode with someone in your life. I'll see you next week.